All right, today we're talking about growth and development. This is Unit 3 of Science. Awesome sauce. All right. I don't know where's my mouse. All right, cool. Okay, wait. There we go. All right, so Unit 3 focuses on biology, the branch of science that investigates every form of life, how it survives, and where it originates. So, whenever we talk about biology, we're talking about how we investigate things like plants, animals. How do plants and animals form? Do they reproduce asexually or sexually? Do we talk about how do plants pollinate? How do the seeds of the plants actually get to one place or another? That's what we're talking about when we talk about biology. There's more meanings of biology if you look it up. Sometimes you can Google jobs for biology, and you'll see that a lot of jobs actually require biologists in order to perform them duties. Even whenever it talks about other forms of science like chemistry, astronomy, things like that. Like I told class last year, whenever I seen a job open for Bluebell Ice Cream to make ice cream, they actually look for people who had chemistry degrees. The reason why, because you're dealing with different chemicals when you're dealing with making ice cream. That's how you get the flavoring of the ice cream. That's also how you form the chemical balance so you don't make people sick. If you didn't notice, years ago, Bluebell Country Ice Cream had to be taken off the shelves because it was making people sick because somebody didn't do the right chemical balance. And guess what? The next day they had a new job posting because obviously that dude got fired. All right, moving on. All right, so what is life? Life is anything living. But what does it mean to be living? All living things or organisms share these basic characteristics of life. They are made up of one or more cells. They sense and respond to stimuli, anything that causes a reaction in organisms such as sunlight, temperature, or other environmental factors. They obtain and use energy for life processes. They also reproduce. That's why I was talking about reproducing asexually or sexually. Remember, I told you about the sponges. The sponges actually reproduce asexually. That means that they are actually cloning themselves and they don't need a male or female organism in order to form another life. They can clone themselves. Remember the example I used for SpongeBob. SpongeBob actually is able to clone himself. He used it in the cartoon, which was scientifically accurate. You've seen him clone himself out of his little sponge hole. Sponges actually do clone themselves, as well as bacteria. Whenever you talk about bacteria, have you ever seen mold on the walls? Mold eventually expand because it is cloning itself. It's building on top of its cells. Also, they grow, change, and develop as well. There is a huge diversity of life on our planet. They all share the same characteristics that set them apart from non-living things and living things. So, as you see right here, fish, we talked about it earlier in the year. We still haven't discovered all the sea life in the world, let alone people trying to go out of space and discover new life. We need to learn how to discover life that is actually on our planet. All life haven't been discovered. There is literally only 12% of the actual ocean that has actually been discovered right now. So, for all we know, we could have mermaids, megalodon, or whatever it is below the sea. You never know. So, all living things are made of cells. So, we have single-celled organisms and multi-celled organisms. So, you see right here, this is a single-celled organism. Example of a single-celled organism, believe it or not, jellyfish. A jellyfish is a single-celled organism. And of course, you go to the bottom of the ocean, you'll see more single-celled organisms. Bacteria is usually a single-celled organism. Multi-celled organisms, like in the picture over here of the octopus, is a multi-celled organism. As humans, we are multi-celled organisms. There you go. Organisms have to maintain homeostasis by responding to external and internal stimuli. organisms need a stable internal environment for survival. Like you see with the penguins here, the penguins are currently in a type of cold climate, cold environment, type of tundra environment in order to survive. Because if they was in a warm environment, it's a good chance they don't survive. Something similar to polar bears. The reason why they're becoming extinct is because the ice caps are melting. And with the ice caps being melting, they are in warmer environments. It's harder for them to travel. It's harder for them to find food. So therefore, a lot of polar bears are becoming extinct because they're not able to react and maintain their homeostasis. All right. Deoxyribonucleic acid. That is a tough word to say. I do apologize if I messed it up. A long molecule that contains your unique genetic code. Bacterial cell structure, as you see, you got pili, DNA, flagella, capsule, cell wall, plasma membrane. You also have osomes. This really supposed to be chromosomes. It's just cut off. I'm just playing with you. So this is supposed to be chromosomes. So as you see right here, these are your chromosomes. These are your pili. This is where your DNA structure is. You got your flagella, which is the long version of the pili. You got your capsule. You got your cell wall that protects your cells and your cell membrane. You got your plasma membrane there. So that's your cell structure as we know it. Some organisms make their own food through photosynthesis, like grass and trees. Some organisms eat other organisms as food, like elephants. Now, what we do know about elephants, they're not necessarily carnivores, they're herbivores. However, if you threaten their young, they will stomp you out. Now, me, Mr. Hunter, I'm vegetarian, so I eat a lot of plants and get nutrients from plants. I don't eat a lot of meat, but that means that I'm still actually eating other organisms because plants are technically living organisms. So I'm an organism that eat other organisms. Now, when we talk about photosynthesis, that is talking about more like plant life. Plants are able to create their own food through nutrients, and of course, you know, that's why they have to have their roots and rooted into the ground, because guess what? The roots is actually creating their food for them. And photosynthesis is basically a process where they're creating their own food, and of course, if we don't have plants, we actually don't have oxygen. So we need photosynthesis in order to keep the world going around, basically. All right, to grow is to increase in size, to develop is to change. So as we see the seed grow, the seed actually starts sprouting, is growing into an actual plant, is growing roots, and it's becoming a whole tree. So not only is it developing, it's actually increasing in size, so it's growing and developing. So it's actually changing its physical form. Like I said before, you got asexual and sexual reproduction. Of course, you see down there with the bee with the flower is pollinating that flower from another flower. So whenever a bee is like in one flower, it's getting the pollen from that flower and pollinating another flower. So that flower can eventually form seeds and grow other flowers around it. Right here, you see where the asexual reproduction. This is a type of single cell organism that is going to clone itself and make another type of organism. As far as the next picture goes, I'll let your parents explain that one. Best way possible. That's the birds and the bees. That's something for your parents to talk to you about. But like I said, the perfect example is down there with the bee with the actual flower pollinating it. All right. So in asexual reproduction, the offspring are identical to the parent. One cell replicates its parts, splits in halves, and becomes two, and so on and so on. So when we talk about the current pandemic, we got a cell called corona. It's basically the coronavirus. It's actually splitting up and multiplying. So it's like basically asexual reproduction when it talks about the actual bacteria that's causing the coronavirus. And of course, in bacteria, this process is called binary fission. Binary fission occurs in most unicellular organisms. You have one parent cell, then you have two nucleus that divides, you have three cytoplasm divides, and then you have two daughter cells. This is what it might look like in an amoeba. Budding is also a form of asexual reproduction that occurs in some multicellular organisms. This small animal is called a hydra. It is related to the jellyfish. Can you imagine what it would look like if a human reproduced by budding? It would look absolutely weird. I would literally have like a head popping out of my shoulder right now. And that is not what we want to see. But remember that process when I told you about SpongeBob. You may have seen SpongeBob budding other SpongeBobs out of his body. So that's what it would actually look like. What I want to say about this. Of course, this is called a hydra. This is not what Captain America was fighting. This is an actual species. For those of you who know that Marvel reference, more power to you. Plants can also reproduce asexually. As you see right here, you see over there, I think that's the potato. You can see how a potato can grow eyes and it can actually bud out and make other potatoes around it. I mean, you can basically plant a potato and then it sprouts other potatoes. I believe that, no, it can't be the same with watermelon, but definitely with a potato. All right. Asexual reproduction in a strawberry plant. This is what it looks like. It's sprouting out other plants. It's creating itself. Actually, this would be relevant to a watermelon. Watermelons, if you plant a watermelon, you better have a lot of field to plant a watermelon in because it will sprout everywhere. And watch your step. Same thing with cantaloupe. Asexual reproduction needs no seeds. Plants can produce roots from cutting that are called from cuttings that are placed in water. So let's say, for instance, I have a plant. If I cut off the right part of the plant, I can actually place it in water and it will grow its own roots and start forming another plant that is the same type of plant. How does this differ from sexual reproduction? Oh, Lord. In humans, we produce this way. A baby receives half of its genetic material, DNA, from its mother in the egg, and half from its father in the sperm. Egg and sperm are called gametes. When they come together, the first cell that is formed is called a zygote. Sexual reproduction is a type of reproduction in which the genetic materials from two different cells combine, producing an offspring. As you see in this example over here with the kittens, you have a mother cat, you have a father cat. There go the sperm, there go the egg, they come together for fertilization, they create the zygote, mitosis and cell division, boom, there go you a baby. Lord. But don't get the idea that sexual reproduction only occurs in animals. They also occur in plants. Like I talked to you about the bees earlier. Of